Gaza's so-called safe zone on fire again overnight. Move, move, comes the call as survivors are carried from the flames. Witnesses say 2 rockets struck this seating area in the tented encampment of Al-Mawasi in the south of the Strip. Israel said it was targeting Hamas militants. Hospital staff said 8 people, including 2 children, were killed.
Every day we sit here, keeping warm. Everything's fine. Suddenly, 2 rockets hit, one after the other. As you can see, we have a heater, a fridge, and some blankets. We were keeping warm, and there were children here. There were children.
This is Netanyahu, who claims they were fighting the resistance. They were all martyrs, all from the people. None of them were part of the resistance. I challenge Netanyahu to find even one member of the resistance among those killed today.
Gaza's health ministry says 2 more people were killed in a strike nearby on this car, part of what the head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees calls a recent escalation in Israeli attacks, even as sources on Palestinian and Israeli sides are reported today to be talking of a narrowing gap in ceasefire negotiations. In Jerusalem, Israel's Prime Minister spoke of progress in talks to bring home Israeli hostages, but said he didn't know how much longer it would take to get results. In Gaza's far north, the pressure on remaining civilians is intensifying. The director of the Kamal Adwan hospital in Beit Lahia says Israel has deployed a remote vehicle to the entrance after targeting the building with shelling and gunfire over the weekend. He says it follows an order to close the hospital and move its 90 remaining patients elsewhere, something he calls next to impossible. Yesterday, Hamas released this video purported to show its fighters attacking Israeli troops and equipment in the far north. Since October, Israel has said it's operating there to prevent Hamas from re-establishing itself. It denies accusations of ethnic cleansing in an attempt to create a buffer zone. Further south today, Gaza's Hamas-run government media office said 50 people had been killed or injured in an Israeli air and ground assault on a school-turned-shelter in the Nusayrat refugee camp. In Gaza, another day of reported progress on a ceasefire, another day of destruction, death, and overwhelming grief.
Well, Bushra Khalidi, who's the policy lead for Oxfam in the occupied West Bank, joins me now. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Let's just start with those reports of Benjamin Netanyahu in the Knesset and Palestinian officials striking this cautious optimism almost. Is that what you're feeling right now? Do you have hope?
I mean, we have to have hope. Otherwise, we wouldn't have survived the last 15 months under this relentless, onslaught and death and destruction, as your report mentioned it. But, it's hard to get very excited just because of so many of those promises early on this year where we were so close to a ceasefire and then negotiations would fall through. So I'm not getting excited yet, and I will stay cautious as the Prime Minister was.
Do you feel like this is any different? Do you feel like momentum might be going this way? Because we've been hearing more and more reports of ceasefire talks going a bit better.
I mean, I really am not able to comment as, I'm not involved in such negotiations. This is way above my pay grade. But
sure, I just wondered if you got a sense.
Yeah, I think, there's definitely been talks. Everybody is really seeing kind of this coming closer to an end. But, unfortunately, the situation on the ground is, remains nothing short of apocalyptic. It's an absolute nightmare. So it's difficult to kind of rejoice when, we keep waking up every single day to new massacres and new shellings and new bombings.
Let's talk more about the situation on the ground. I do wonder what it is like to go and look for food and drink in Gaza right now. Just talk me through what that might look like for a family.
Families are starving. families and parents. I know myself because my family is in the south right now. The entire Gaza Strip is facing acute malnutrition. So we can expect that many parents right now in Gaza are skipping meals so that their children are at least getting one meal a day. And my brother-in-law was telling me last week when I was speaking to him that they were telling the children to stop playing and stop horsing around because they would get dizzy because they've not, eaten enough, and they don't want them to get dizzy and feeling sick because they just simply don't have enough food. We're seeing children in Gaza rummaging through rubbish for scraps of food, and we're seeing entire communities being systematically cut off from life-saving aid. And when they are accessing aid, it's overcrowded, lines of people, of children, with their pots and their pans, desperate for, a little soup or whatever the soup kitchens are selling in that day. I mean, it's just absolutely unconscionable for me to watch all of these children have turned into basically, looking for food and water every day. That has become their childhood in Gaza.
And you say your family is in the south, but what about the situation in the north where we've heard reports that it's even worse? What's the situation there?
There's been just 12 trucks from the analysis that we have and the numbers that we've had access to of food and water that have entered the North Gaza Governorate in the last 2.5 months. And that is composed of Bet Lahia, Jabalia, and Bet Hanun, are the areas that Israel announced to besiege 2.5 months ago, and where basically they've effectively ethnically cleansed the northern part of the strip, asking people to evacuate to Gaza City and the south. And now what the images we're seeing of those areas is absolute complete erasure and destruction. This is not...
I don't have you for very long. I just wanted to get one last question. What would you like to see happen? Just very briefly, finally, what needs to happen right now?
Israel, as the occupying power, has the clear obligations under international law to protect and provide for the people of Gaza, yet it continues to flout these laws with impunity. The international community cannot continue to look away. Every day without action is a day complicit in the suffering of millions of Palestinians. It's not just a humanitarian crisis. This is a political solution that we need. With the winter biting harder each day, we have more than 1 million people that are left without adequate shelter. We need an immediate unconditional ceasefire, and we need unfettered access for humanitarian aid, because every minute of inaction costs lives. And our message to the world is clear. Humanity is at stake in Gaza and in the world. And if we do nothing, history is going to judge us for failing to stop these atrocities.
Bushra Khalidi from Oxfam, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you.